Hola, me llamo Alina Ochoa, and this is my language and cultural contact presentation. So the activities I used for the contact hours were I spent 30 minutes on an app called Emergency Medical Spanish Guide, another 30 minutes on another app called Lingro to go, and then an hour and 30 minutes in each documentary that I watched. So the first documentary, oh, sorry, the first app that I used was the Emergency Medical Spanish Guide. This one had different medical terminology. Different ones I learned were in personal information and test and procedure. So words I learned were like tipo de sangre, which means blood type, respiro profundo, which is take a deep breath. I also learned le voy a poner una sonda en el vagina, which means I'm going to insert a catheter into your bladder. Another one I liked was necesitamos una muestra de orina para los análisis. We need a urine sample for analysis. And with this one, I didn't find any nuances because it was just an app I had on my phone. Didn't really go into any of that. But I did find some nuances in this documentary that I watched. It was called El Laberinto de las Enfermedades Raras. So it's just the lab of the rare diseases. So pretty much the terminology just goes into rare diseases. The documentary was about two little kids that had these diseases that the doctors couldn't figure out what it was. So they saw different types of doctors and they were just getting worse and worse. So terminology I learned was febrícula diarrhea, which means feverish diarrhea. Different ones I learned were genetista, which means geneticist, pathóloga, which means pathology, herramienta de diagnóstico, which means diagnostic tool. I saw herramienta in a lot of the documentaries, mainly because they were using different types of tools in the medical field. So I think that's why they had herramienta in there a lot. And nuances I noticed was that this was not only patient focused, but very family focused. I feel like in documentaries in English, like medical documentaries, they're very patient focused. Like, how are the patient going? How are they going to get through this? How are they going to live the rest of their lives? But in this Hispanic documentary is more family focused, where they were asking questions like, how are the family going to get through this? How is the family going to live the rest of their lives with this within the family? So it was just very family focused. And the family was very heavily involved in the patient's life and what they were doing and all the decision making. Another nuance I noticed was taking a baby to the hospital often was seen as abuse or hurtful to the baby, which I found interesting because in the US, this is only seen as a good thing that you're actively involved in your baby's health and trying to get the baby to feel better. You're doing whatever possible to help the baby. But in Hispanic cultures, taking to the baby to the hospital often was seen as abuse. Like this was harmful to the baby because you're disrupting the baby's normal life. So it was interesting seeing that they were concerned about how often they were taking to the baby, when that can only, at least for me, be considered a good thing because it's going to help figure out what's wrong with the baby. So another documentary I watched was Gente Única. And then a few terminology that stood out for me were incómodo, which means uncomfortable, prosthesis, which means prosthetics, and then traje de gala, which means evening dress. It was actually interesting. One of the patients had said that his prosthesis made him feel like he was wearing a traje de gala, which means, evening dress. So he felt like he was very dressed up whenever he was putting on his prosthetics. And then nuances I noticed were that children are very important in families. The family revolves around the children, and they were doing whatever possible to make these children comfortable, even though they had diseases that prevented their arms and like all their limbs from growing. So the family were helping them out and trying to encourage them to be independent at a very young age. Even when they were children, they were pushing them to be on their own and do their own thing. So it was really nice to see that core independence, but also that reliance on family for that emotional support, because the people with these diseases, they were also heavily reliant on their family, but for that emotional aspect. I feel like in the US, it's more independence in everything. But in Hispanic cultures, it's independence, yes, but with that reliance, the emotional support on family. And they were always very joking and positive about the disease. It didn't let them get them down that they had or they were born with this. They were making light of the situation, so I thought that very enlightening and sweet. And then another app I used was Lingro to Go. It had different terminology. The one I focused on was health and safety, and ones that stood out to me were words like insalubre, which means unhealthy, sano, which means healthy, variedad, which means variety, prueba la comida, which means try the food, and ser alérgica, which means to be allergic. I didn't notice any nuances in this one because it was on an app. Um, but I did enjoy this one. It had little fun games. So you would do a pretest, and after the pretest, it would let you pick different activities that you can earn points through, and then you can use the points in the shop to earn little other tokens and things like that. So I thought it was really cute because it encourages you to learn more Spanish and everything. Um, so overall, the nuances I learned were that family is heavily important in the Hispanic culture, even in the decision making, and very involved in the patient's life. And then terminology I learned overall was mainly in clinical kind of health terminology, and then some focused in nutrition. But overall, I really enjoyed this one. They had a lot of interesting words in this app. But yeah, thanks for watching my presentation. Hope you enjoyed it. Bye.